Hey guys, welcome back. We are in Matthew 23 today, and we are beginning a series for the next day or two, maybe three, on what makes Jesus really, really mad. Jesus had some things to say in anger to some religious people. What were those things, and what can we learn from them?
Welcome to Everyday Truth with Skelly. We believe the Bible is true and relevant to everyone, everywhere, every day. If today's conversation is a help to you, take a moment to leave a review or share it with a friend. Thanks for listening. Now, let's join Kurt for today's episode.
Hey friends, Matthew 23 today. We are in verse 13, and I promised you that we would come to this section in Matthew 23 where Jesus really just kind of lays it on the line to the religious leaders of the day. He's been talking about them, but now he wants to talk right to them, and he does not mince words. Understand the principle that those that would use religion or use religious things like the temple and the word of God, the law of God, for their own nefarious purposes, boy, they are inviting to themselves a pretty stiff judgment. I think about the passage in Galatians 1 where the Apostle Paul said, if people mess with the truth of the gospel, let them be accursed. That's very heavy language. Or the language of James 3, where James said, don't be not many masters. Don't aspire to positions of teaching and authority unless you're willing to understand that you will be held to a higher level of accountability. So here in Matthew 23, Jesus is holding these religious leaders to a very high level of accountability, and he is pronouncing a series of woes on them, W-O-E. The word woe is a word used in judgment. Like this is, I'm telling you that you are going to receive consequences for your behavior. So Jesus pronounces these woes, and he indicts these religious leaders for the things that they've been doing. Now, they've been doing it surreptitiously, covertly, and yet Jesus is pinning their motives. He's showing them who they really are, who he knows them really to be. So look at Matthew 23 and verse 13, where Jesus said, "But woe unto you." There are 7 woes here in these verses. "Woe unto you, scribes, Pharisees, hypocrites." So he calls them by their titles, scribes and Pharisees, and then he labels them for what they are, hypocrites. Now, the word hypocrite in Jesus' day meant actor. So the actors on stage were called hypocrites. So Jesus is saying, hey, scribes, hey, Pharisees, you are just actors. You're not real. You're playing a part. You're playing the part of a religious, sincere person. You're playing the part of somebody who represents God. You're playing the part of a teacher of the law. But in essence, you are not those things. So scribes, Pharisees, hypocrites, here's the first woe. Ye shut up the kingdom of heaven against men. Well, what an excoriating judgment. Here's what you're doing. You're like a gatekeeper at the kingdom, and you are not permitting people to go in. Now, if there's anything a religious leader ought to do, it's to invite people to God, to invite people to know God, to invite people to the things of God. And yet Jesus said, you are doing the exact opposite. You're keeping people out of the kingdom. And here's what it goes on to say, for neither go ye in yourselves, neither suffer ye them that are entering to go in. So Jesus gives them a twofold condemnation. You're not going into the kingdom. You are living in your own little world of self-delusion, and you are not helping or ushering anybody else into the kingdom. So damning is your philosophy. So subversive are your motives that you are deluding yourself, and you are actually hurting other people. You are not accomplishing anything of spiritual value. Verse number 14, The second woe unto you, scribes, Pharisees, again, hypocrites, for ye devour widows' houses, and for a pretense, in other words, as an act, for a pretense you make long prayer. Therefore ye shall receive the greater damnation, a greater level of accountability and judgment because of what you're doing. So, wow. So two things here. First of all, you devour widows' houses. So a widow in the Bible, and we see it throughout the New Testament especially, was a person that was very vulnerable, a person in that society who could be taken advantage of very easily. That's why throughout the Bible, you see great examples of God's love for and care for widows. Even in the ministry of Jesus, Jesus cared for widows. At the cross, he cared for a widow, his own mother, Mary. He healed the widow's son at Nain, raised him from the dead, the widow. So Jesus talked about a poor widow in the parable that prayed, that importunate prayer. In Acts chapter 6, remember, it was a conflict in the early church about caring for widows. I think about 1 Timothy chapter 5, where the Apostle Paul spent half a chapter talking to Timothy about, hey, be sure that you're caring for widows indeed. I think about James chapter 1, where James said, pure religion and undefiled before God and the Father is this, to visit the fatherless and the widows in their affliction. So widows feature largely in the Bible, and God is the defender of, the supporter of widows. So here, Jesus is saying, but you religious leaders, you take advantage of widows. You will take their estate. You'll take the assets that they own after their husband has died, and you will abscond it. You will exploit them. You will take from them. And wow, I can't think of anything more evil than taking advantage of weak and vulnerable people, but that's what they were doing. And then at the same time, they're offering long prayers. They're thinking just because they know how to give flowery speeches in their prayers, they know how to use big words, people are going to think that they're so spiritual. And Jesus said, I'm on to you. I see the true character of your heart and the way that you treat the vulnerable. And I see the pretension of your prayer. Just because it's long and flowery doesn't make it a sincere prayer. I think about the parable of the publican and the Pharisee, how the Pharisee made that long prayer on the street corner. I thank thee that I'm this and I do that. And that publican just beat his breast and said, be merciful to me, a sinner. So Jesus is pointing out the complete hypocrisy of the Pharisees in these verses 13 and 14. Look quickly at verse number 15. We'll cover one more. Woe unto you, scribes, Pharisees, hypocrites. So it's the same thing. He gives the titles. You're scribes and Pharisees, but here's what you really are. You're actors. Scribes, Pharisees, hypocrites. For you compass sea and land to make one proselyte. So what was a proselyte? A proselyte was one that was converted from another religion to Judaism. So the Pharisees, they were evangelistic in the sense that they wanted everyone to be a Jew. The Jews are God's chosen people, and they were more than willing to argue about the tenets of Judaism, and they wanted people to come under the number. And why? Because that's more money for us. That's more influence for us. So they were very radical about getting people into their tribe. Today, we would say getting people into their church, getting people into their denomination. They're very, very avid about that. You would compass land and sea. You'd go to great lengths to make a proselyte, but watch what really happens in verse number 15. And when he is made, when you have secured him as a convert to Judaism, when he is made, he is twofold more the child of hell than yourselves. So that's a double whammy, isn't it? Because what Jesus is saying is you're a child of hell, and you've made him twofold a child of hell. So in other words, you are not helping these people by proselytizing them into Judaism because you don't understand Judaism. You don't understand even the theme of the Old Testament law, which was pointing to the suffering servant and the coming Messiah. So you might convert people to your theology. You might convert people. You might get people to join your church. You might get people to name your denominational name, but you don't have any real understanding of spiritual truth. You don't have any real understanding of what salvation is. And so to convert them to what you believe is to convert them to something that's actually going to damn their soul to hell. By converting them to your theology, you are not helping them. You're actually hurting them in a double-fold way. And here's how. Because you're giving them a false assurance. You're giving them the false assurance that they have found truth and that they are now safe, but they have not found truth. And they are not now safe. And you have made them twofold a child of hell because now they think they're safe and they're really not. So they're never going to look at their need anymore. They're going to erroneously think that they're okay, and they are not. What a damning and damaging thing these Pharisees and scribes were doing. So we've covered three of those woes, verses 13, 14, and 15. For sake of time, we'll stop right there. We'll come back. And Jesus has more to say, and he's mad. And boy, when Jesus is worked up, then we probably would do well to listen and make those applications even to ourselves, because we all have a bit of pharisaism in us, don't we? So that's it for today. We'll stop right there. Hope you have a great day in the Lord. God bless you, my friends.